was a hopeless situation. The Assyrian military surrounded the city of Jerusalem, and their military came almost 200,000 strong. King Hezekiah was inside Jerusalem. He had spent years strengthening the city walls, trying to fortify the position there, but there was no way they could stand against an army that strong. Hezekiah imagined what it would be like to watch his people starve as the food gave out. But a prophet named Isaiah came to the king and said, "Do not be afraid, God is with you." You can read about it in Isaiah chapter 37. The king went to bed that night. And in the morning, the guards looked out over the walls. God had sent one angel in the night. Just one. And 185,000 of the Assyrian troops were dead. One angel wiped out an army. That's power. About 100 years after that, God's people had turned their backs on him. God had sent the Babylonian army to come and conquer Jerusalem, and the survivors were carried off into exile. One of those young men was a guy by the name of Ezekiel, and Ezekiel wanted to go home. He was standing by a canal in Babylon when God gave him a vision. You can read about it in Ezekiel chapter 1. Ezekiel saw 4 angels, and they were so powerful that Ezekiel couldn't even find the words to describe what they were like. It's confusing in the English. If you try to read it in the original Hebrew, it's even more confusing. English tries to clean it up so that we can understand it. But Ezekiel goes, there were wings, and there were eyes, and there were wheels, and they had 4 faces, and they moved in weird ways. And he can't find the words for it. And he looks up over these 4 living creatures, and he looks up and he sees God on his throne, and his brain short circuits, and he falls on his face. That's power. Jump ahead about 600 years after that. And an angel comes to a man named Zechariah. The first thing the angel has to say is, "Do not be afraid." About 6 months after that, the angel appears to a young woman named Mary to announce to Mary that she's going to give birth to the Son of God. And the first thing the angel says is, "Do not be afraid." About 9 months after that, while shepherds were watching their flocks at night, an angel of the Lord appeared to them. The glory of the Lord shone around him, and they were terrified. What's the first thing the angel says? Do not be afraid. You can read about it in Luke chapter 1 and 2. That's power. If an angel shows up, and the first thing they got to say is, "Hey, how you doing?" No. They say, "Do not be afraid." That's power. God's angels have power. They're not weaklings. They're not little babies that have cute little wings. They are powerful. Now, if that's how powerful one angel is to take out an entire army, if that's how powerful 4 angels are that when they show up, it short-circuits someone's brain, if that's how powerful one angel is when they show up, they have to say, "Don't be afraid," how powerful is it when 1,000 angels get together? How about 10,000 angels? How about 10,000 times 10,000 angels? Now, that is power. And this is what the angels do. Then I looked, and I heard the voice of many angels, numbering thousands upon thousands, and 10,000 times 10,000. They encircled the throne and the living creatures and the elders. In a loud voice they sang, "Worthy is the Lamb who was slain to receive power and wealth and wisdom and strength and honor and glory and praise." The angels gather in heaven, and all of that power praises Jesus. So last week we had a grammar lesson. We talked about verb tenses. Those of you who weren't here, you missed a great sermon. I know that would have just pleased you to get that grammar. But it's really important to get this, that past tense is things that were in the past. You woke up this morning. Present tense is what's going on right now. You are awake, I think, mostly. And that's different, right? Jesus did die, but now he is alive. And we took a look at that last week. So, past tense, things that were. Present tense, things that are. So this scene with all of these angels and all of this power, past tense or present tense? Let me read this again. Worthy is the Lamb. Past tense or present tense? Present tense. This is not a picture of something that happened thousands and thousands of years ago. This is not the picture of something that's going to happen sometime in the future. This is right now. Present tense. Because Jesus is still that powerful. And the angels say he's worth it. Now, if you've been around churches for a long time, you might recognize the word omnipotent. Anyone know what that means? You didn't realize you'd be getting all sorts of pop quizzes today. Anyone know what omnipotent means? All-powerful. Yeah. All-powerful. Now, you might have learned that word years and years ago, but the way we often live that God is omnipotent, is sort of like we live the truth of the Great Emu War. Huh? So, I like random facts. Maybe you've heard of the Great Emu War. It's a real thing. You can look it up on Wikipedia. Australia went to war with emus, with these big kind of like ostrich-like birds, and Australia lost. Dead serious. Look it up on Wikipedia. It's a crazy story. And it's a fun thing. You go there and go, oh, look, Great Emu War, and Australia lost. But you know what? It's true, but it does not affect my life. To my knowledge, I'm not related to anyone in Australia. To my knowledge, I do not have any relatives that died in the Great Emu War. I am not close to any emus. It's just a fun fact. If Jesus is all-powerful, is that just a fun fact, or is that something that actually affects me? It affects the angels. They say, Jesus is all-powerful, and so he is worthy. He is worthy to receive power. The angels say, look at all the power we've got. We don't need to keep it. Here, Jesus, you get the power. Can you imagine giving up that much power? I mean, some of the best, so I'm a comic reader, I'm a geek. Some of the best stories are when superheroes give up their powers to help someone else. And they're really dramatic stories. But as powerful as those superheroes are, that ain't nothing compared to an angel. Not really. And the angel says, here, all my power, Jesus, it's yours. That is something that is real. Is that us? Is Jesus worth our power? How do you use your power? I know for me, I tend to depend on my power day by day. It's up to me to get out of bed. It's up to me to get things done. Maybe you have loved someone and you've said it's up to me to help them. I have to help them with their addiction. It's up to me. It's up to me to help that person with their depression. It's up to me. It's up to me and my power, and so you hold on to your power because you have to do these things. And what happens? I've said this to people, and I've had to say it to myself so many times. I can't control that person. I can love them, but in the end, I don't have the power to actually change them. If I don't give Jesus my power, it means it's up to me. And I don't have that power. But if it's up to Jesus, if I say, Jesus, here, you use my power however you will, I'm going to give it to you. You're worthy of it. Well, then it's in his hands. It's not in my hands. And if he uses me, cool. But it's up to him. It's not up to me. The angels don't just sing about power, though. Worthy are you to receive wealth. How do you decide what's worth spending your money on? Is it worth spending your money to go see that movie? You see the preview, and you kind of go, I think it'd be worth it. Remember back when I was in college, I went to go see a movie with friends, and there were all the previews before the movie, right? And one of the previews is running, and my two friends look at each other, and they look at the screen, and they yell out, "Rental!" They thought that movie that the preview was not worth going to see in theaters. How do you decide what's worth spending your money on? The angels say, all our wealth, it goes to Jesus. You're worthy of it. You're worth it. How do you decide? Well, it's worth spending my money on the rent or the mortgage because it's worth having a place to live. It's worth spending my money on some food. Go to Kroger, Aldi, whatever, Remke. It's worth spending my money on the kids. I mean, come on. Where does God line up in where you say it's worth spending your money on? Is he last with the leftovers? You kind of go, well, I can choose to either eat a Taco Bell or give that $2.50 to God. Let's be honest, Taco Bell, right? That's crazy. The angels keep going. Worthy is the Lamb to receive wisdom. My smarts. Now, there's all sorts of different kinds of intelligence. Some people are really smart with how they use their body. Some people are really smart when they look at math. Some people are really smart relationally. All of that falls under the category of wisdom for this. How do you use that intelligence? Do you say it's worth it to spend that intelligence on God? To look at Jesus and say, oh, you've given us your word. I'm going to use some of my intelligence to look at this and connect some dots and go, wow, look at how amazing Jesus is. Or are you busy using your intelligence trying to figure out how to get a bigger paycheck? Not that a bigger paycheck is wrong, but where do you put it? And see, this is the dangerous thing. The angels say that Jesus is worth all of this. Let's give that movie example again. You decide that a movie is not worth you spending your money on. You don't get the movie then, right? Probably not a huge sacrifice for you. Might be a little bit of a sacrifice. But you might decide, my money is worth more than what that movie is going to give me. And then you don't get the movie. If Jesus isn't worth it to you, you don't get Jesus. And that's really scary. Because Jesus is coming back. He is still powerful. And when he returns, he's not going to be showing up going, oh, those Romans put that spear in my side. I'm having such a hard time. Could you give me an Advil? He's going to show up as the all-powerful judge. And if Jesus wasn't worth your time, Jesus will honor your decision and say, okay, I wasn't worth your time. Go. You don't get to spend eternity with me in heaven. And when I look at my life, that's really scary. But I want to go back to what the angels were singing, because I was leaving out a phrase. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain. See, Jesus started with all those angels. And Jesus said, I'm going to give up my power. He took off his crown and he laid it down and he became a holy embryo. God became human. And when Mary gave birth, Jesus had already been human for about 9 months. And he lived And his entire life, he said that God was worth it. And when he is arrested, he didn't call on the angels to fight for him. And when he was beaten, he didn't call on the angels to fight at his side. And when he was nailed to a cross, he didn't call on the angels to say, "Get me out of here." And Jesus died because he looked at you and said, "Worth it." Jesus gave up his power to be nailed to a cross to take your sins away. Every time that you said he wasn't worth it, he said, "Punish me instead." That's why he's worthy. It's not just because he's God. That would be enough. But it's because he is still alive and he is still powerful, and he used that power for your good. He uses his power still to forgive you. We talked about that a little bit last week. Jesus is still alive, and so he still loves you, and so he still forgives you. So he looks at you and says, "Forgiven, gone, washed away." He uses his power still to give you the means of grace. That's the gospel in word and sacrament. So he gives you his word. So you're able to use your intelligence to read God's word, to listen to it as a podcast, to dig in and say, "Wow, look at how powerful he still is." And he uses that power to forgive me. He gives you baptism, where he uses his power to drown the old sinful nature and create a new creation and say, "You are my child." He uses his power in communion to give you his body and blood in with and under, the bread and the wine, to give you forgiveness you can taste and see. He uses his power to send his angels. The angels are still around. Sometimes you read the Bible and you get the idea, wow, there were angels all over back then. And they were, but they showed up. Remember how I said, here were some angels, and then 100 years later there was another. God doesn't lift the curtain up that often to let us see what's going on. Sometimes he does, and that's pretty cool. But the angels are still here. The Bible says that he sends his angels to protect you. Can you imagine that? Right now, there's an angel strong enough to wipe out an entire army protecting you. God uses his power. And if anything gets through, it's not because the angel was napping. It's not because the angel was celebrating 5 o'clock and having margaritas. God promises that he works everything out for your good. So if something gets through, it's not because the angel went whoops. It's because the angel said, "God, what am I supposed to do here? This thing will turn out for that person's good? Okay." And God turns out everything for your good, whether it's the big stuff or whether or not you hit a red light or a green light on the way home. All of it. And when you start realizing that God is omnipotent right now, that's going to change a lot for you. Because it means that you can start realizing when something happens to you, it's for your good, not because God messed up. That God is a loving Father. And if you know that when that stuff happens to you, is it still going to hurt? Yeah. But you know it's for your good. It means that when you look at your wealth and what God has given you, you can say, this is actually God's. And God's going to take care of me. So if it looks like it's not enough, God's got this. And you're going to say, I want to give to God. When you look at your intelligence, you're going to go, how can I praise God with my life, wherever I'm at right now? And when you realize that God is omnipotent, it's going to seep through to everything you do. And it's going to give you real peace. And you know what? You already pray that already. You pray that all the time. At the end of the Lord's Prayer, we pray, for yours is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever and ever. You confess every time you pray the Lord's Prayer that God is powerful, that Jesus still reigns. And so when you get to the end of the Lord's Prayer, we're going to be praying in just a little bit. Remember, he's powerful for me. He used that power because he said that I was worth saving, and he saved me. And he still uses that power for my good because he is still powerful. Amen. Now the peace of God that is better than anything we can understand will keep your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus our Lord until he returns to bring us home to life everlasting. Amen. Let's stand. Our God is powerful, and he's used that power to save us. Let's speak a summary of what the Christian faith is. We're going to use